My beloved child, there are moments in life that arrive without warning, moments so quiet that the world keeps moving while one single heartbeat changes everything forever. This story begins with such a moment. He believed it would be another ordinary evening. The sky looked the same. The streets sounded the same. Even the ticking clock on the wall felt painfully ordinary. Yet somewhere beyond everything he could see, an unseen chain of events had already begun moving toward him. He had no idea that within the next few minutes, one unexpected phone call would force him to question every memory he had ever trusted. The strange part was not that someone called. The strange part was that the number had never appeared before, and somehow, the moment the screen lit up, a feeling he could not explain settled deep inside his heart. It was neither fear nor excitement. It was the unmistakable feeling that life was quietly standing at a doorway, waiting for him to answer. Before he even touched the phone, he felt as though the call already knew something about him that he had forgotten long ago. The room suddenly felt different. Every tiny sound became louder. Every passing second seemed heavier than the last. What could a single phone call possibly carry that was powerful enough to change everything? Without realizing it, he stared at the screen for several endless seconds. Most people would have ignored an unknown number, but something invisible kept pulling his attention back. The phone stopped ringing. Silence returned. He slowly exhaled, believing the moment had passed. Then, just as he placed the phone back on the table, it rang again. The exact same number. This time, the pause before answering felt even longer. His hand hovered over the screen while hundreds of possibilities rushed through his mind. A wrong number? Someone asking for help? News from the past? None of those thoughts explained why his heart refused to calm down. Finally, he answered. Yet the voice on the other side did not introduce itself. Instead, it quietly asked a single question that made every thought inside his mind disappear. Are you finally ready to hear what was never meant to stay hidden forever? Those words echoed in complete silence. He searched his memory for the voice but found nothing familiar. Before he could ask who was speaking, the caller gently said something even stranger. Everything you believed happened by chance, never happened by chance. The line became silent again, almost as though the caller wanted him to discover the meaning on his own. At that very moment, every ordinary memory suddenly felt connected to something much larger than he had ever imagined. He tried asking questions, but the mysterious caller never answered directly. Instead, every sentence felt like another missing piece of an invisible puzzle. The caller mentioned places he had almost forgotten. A park bench he once sat on. A rainy afternoon he never thought mattered. A smile exchanged with a complete stranger. Tiny moments that seemed meaningless at the time suddenly returned with astonishing clarity. How could someone know about memories he had never shared with anyone? His breathing slowed as realization quietly began replacing confusion. The caller was not describing random events. Every forgotten moment was connected by one invisible thread that had been hidden in plain sight for years. Then came the sentence that changed everything once again. Someone has been protecting the future you were always meant to reach. Those words refused to leave his mind. Protecting his future? Who would do such a thing? Why would anyone remain invisible for so long? Every answer seemed to create an even greater mystery. The more he listened, the more impossible it became to end the call. It felt as though every second carried another truth waiting just beyond his reach, and he knew that hanging up now might mean losing the greatest revelation of his entire life. The mysterious voice finally grew softer, almost as though it understood the weight of everything it had revealed. There is one final thing you must know before this conversation can continue. His hands became perfectly still. Every distraction disappeared. Time itself seemed unwilling to move forward. The caller explained that the greatest surprise was never the phone call itself. The greatest surprise was the reason it had happened today instead of years earlier. There had been countless opportunities for this conversation to take place, yet every single one had been delayed until the exact moment his heart was finally ready to understand what came next. That revelation struck deeper than anything else. Perhaps the biggest changes in life do not begin with dramatic events. Perhaps they begin with a single unexpected moment that arrives exactly when it is supposed to. Just before the connection faded, the mysterious voice whispered one final sentence. The next truth will explain why your name has quietly appeared in places you never knew existed. The call ended without another sound. He remained frozen, staring at the silent phone in his hand, unaware that the mystery had only just begun, and the next chapter would reveal something far more extraordinary than the call itself. A restless night followed, but sleep never truly arrived. Every time he closed his eyes, the caller's final sentence returned with even greater force. Your name has quietly appeared in places you never knew existed. It sounded impossible, yet nothing about that conversation had felt ordinary. As dawn arrived, he made a decision he never imagined he would make. He began searching through old boxes, forgotten notebooks, faded photographs, and dusty envelopes that had remained untouched for years. At first, everything seemed completely normal. Family pictures, school certificates, birthday cards. Ordinary memories from an ordinary life. Then, hidden beneath a stack of yellowed papers, he discovered something that immediately stole his attention. It was an envelope with no address, no stamp, and no sender's name. Across the front, written in handwriting he had never seen before, were only 5 words. Open only after the call. His heartbeat stopped for a brief moment. The envelope looked old, far older than yesterday. How could something written years ago already know that mysterious phone call would happen? His hands trembled as he carefully unfolded the letter inside. It was surprisingly short, yet every line felt impossibly personal. It did not explain who had written it. It did not explain how it had reached him. Instead, it described moments from his childhood with astonishing accuracy. A dream he had never told anyone about. A promise he had made to himself while staring at the night sky. Even the exact words he whispered during one lonely evening years ago were written perfectly on the page. He could not understand it. Those memories belonged to him alone. No diary existed. No recording existed. Yet someone had somehow preserved them long before this day arrived. Then he reached the final sentence of the letter, and everything inside him changed once again. The phone call was never the beginning. It was only the confirmation that you were finally ready to uncover what has always belonged to you. He slowly lowered the letter, realizing the mystery had become far deeper than a stranger making an unexpected call. His thoughts raced toward one impossible question. Who had been watching his journey so closely? The caller had never asked for anything. The letter demanded nothing. There were no threats, no rewards, no promises of fame or fortune. Only truth after truth, arriving exactly when he least expected them. That was what frightened him most. Ordinary mysteries usually leave clues by accident. This mystery seemed designed with extraordinary patience. Every answer appeared only after he had accepted the previous one. As he reread the letter, something slipped from between its folded pages. It was a tiny photograph, faded almost beyond recognition. At first glance, it looked completely ordinary. A quiet street. An old building. A single figure standing far in the background. Then his eyes focused on one unbelievable detail. The figure was holding something in one hand, a mobile phone. The same unusual symbol he had noticed on the caller's screen was clearly visible, even though the photograph looked decades old. His mind refused to accept what he was seeing. How could a symbol from yesterday exist inside an image that seemed to belong to another time entirely? The silence inside the room suddenly felt heavier than ever before. He placed the photograph beside the mysterious letter and looked once more at the phone resting on the table. Hours had passed without another call. Yet deep inside, he knew the conversation was far from over. Whoever had started this journey was carefully revealing one piece at a time, never allowing him to see the full picture all at once. And perhaps that was the only way such a truth could ever be understood. He carefully folded the letter, returned the photograph to its place, and reached for the phone one more time. The screen remained completely dark. Then, just as he convinced himself that nothing else would happen today, the device lit up without making a sound. There was no phone call this time. No number. No message. Only a single sentence glowing quietly across the screen. The next destination has already been waiting for you. His heart began racing again, because he realized the mystery was no longer following him, it was inviting him somewhere he had never expected to go. For several long moments, he simply stared at the glowing words on the screen. The next destination has already been waiting for you. There was no map, no address, no explanation. Only those 9 words, appearing as mysteriously as the phone call itself. Before he could even think of taking a screenshot, the message vanished completely. His inbox was empty. There was no trace that it had ever existed. He searched every folder on his phone, refreshed the screen again and again, but nothing appeared. It was as though the message had never been sent. Yet he remembered every letter perfectly. Suddenly, another detail from the old photograph returned to his mind. The building in the background. He had seen it before. Not recently, but many years ago, during a family trip he barely remembered. At the time, it had seemed completely ordinary. Now it felt like the missing piece of a puzzle that had been waiting for him all along. Without wasting another moment, he decided to go there. The strange part was that he did not feel forced. Instead, It felt as though every step toward that place had already been quietly planned long before he even knew the journey existed. The road looked familiar, yet every turn awakened memories he had forgotten were still inside him. Trees he had passed as a child now seemed to welcome him back. An old bridge carried the same peaceful silence it always had. Even the wind felt strangely comforting, as if it recognized someone returning after a very long absence. When he finally reached the building from the photograph, surprise filled his eyes. It was smaller than he remembered, hidden behind tall trees that almost concealed it from the outside world. Nothing about it suggested that it held extraordinary answers. The doors were closed. The windows reflected only the afternoon sky. But just as he turned to leave, he noticed something almost invisible beside the entrance. A small metal box was built into the wall. It carried no lock, no label, only the exact same symbol that had appeared on the mysterious phone screen and in the faded photograph. His heartbeat quickened. This could not be another coincidence. Every clue was leading to the next with impossible precision. He gently placed his hand against the box, wondering whether anything would happen at all. For a few silent seconds, absolutely nothing changed. Then, with a soft click, the metal door slowly opened on its own. Inside rested only one object. A tiny antique key attached to a weathered tag. Written on the tag were 6 simple words. Not every door is made of wood. He turned the key over in his hand, expecting to find another clue, but there was nothing else. Confusion returned, stronger than before. A key without a lock. A destination without directions. A mystery that refused to explain itself. Yet something inside him whispered that the key was never meant to open a building. It was meant to unlock understanding. Just then, footsteps echoed behind him. He turned around instantly, expecting to see the mysterious caller. Instead, an elderly man stood quietly at the edge of the path, watching him with a gentle smile. The man spoke only one sentence before beginning to walk away. "You've arrived exactly when you were supposed to." Before he could ask a single question, the stranger disappeared behind the trees. He rushed after him, but the path was empty. There was nowhere the man could have gone in such a short time. Once again, the mystery had slipped beyond his reach. He returned to the entrance, still holding the antique key. That's when he noticed something he had completely overlooked. Carved into the stone beneath the metal box was a date. It wasn't today's date. It wasn't yesterday's either. It was the date of his birth. His breath caught. How could a place he had never visited as an adult already bear a connection to the day his life began? Every revelation had grown more personal than the last, but this was different. This wasn't just about forgotten memories anymore. Someone, or something, had known about his story from the very beginning. As the evening light slowly faded across the old building, his phone vibrated once more. This time there was no message, no voice, and no unknown number. There was only a calendar notification that had never existed before. It contained a single line: "Tomorrow, the truth will finally recognize you." He looked at the glowing screen, then at the antique key resting in his palm, realizing that the greatest revelation was no longer approaching, it was already waiting for him. Morning arrived with an unusual stillness, as though the world itself was waiting for something to unfold. He barely slept, yet he felt no exhaustion. The antique key rested beside his phone, and the mysterious calendar notification remained exactly where he had seen it the night before. It had not disappeared like the earlier message. This time, it stayed. The notification contained no location, only a time. As the hour finally arrived, his phone vibrated once again. The screen displayed a single direction: turn around. He slowly lifted his eyes and did exactly that. Standing a few steps behind him was a courier holding a small wooden box. "I've been instructed to deliver this only today," the courier said with a calm smile. "No earlier. No later." Before he could ask who had sent it, the courier politely nodded and walked away. There was no company name on the package, no return address, and no signature. The box looked as though it had been crafted decades ago, waiting patiently for this exact morning to arrive. He carefully placed the antique key into the tiny lock on the wooden box. It fit perfectly. The lock turned without resistance, almost as if it had recognized the key immediately. Inside was no treasure, no money, no mysterious device. There was only a beautifully preserved journal. Every page was handwritten, yet the first page stopped him completely. At the very top were his full name and the exact date of that unexpected phone call. Beneath them was a sentence that made his heart race faster than ever before. "If you are reading this, every step has happened exactly as it was meant to." He turned another page and found detailed descriptions of moments from his own life. Important choices. Quiet victories. Painful disappointments. Acts of kindness he believed no one had ever noticed. Nothing was exaggerated. Nothing was missing. It felt as though someone had quietly observed not only what he had done, but also why he had done it. Then, hidden between two pages, he found a folded note unlike the others. It contained only one line. "The caller never wanted to change your future. The caller wanted you to recognize the future you had already been creating." That realization changed everything. He had spent days believing someone powerful was secretly controlling events around him. But now he understood something far greater. The mysterious caller had never been pulling invisible strings. Instead, each clue had simply revealed the meaning behind moments he had overlooked. Every forgotten conversation, every unexpected delay, every person who entered and quietly left his life had shaped him into the person capable of understanding this journey. The greatest surprise was not hidden in extraordinary events. It had been quietly growing inside ordinary days all along. As he reached the final pages of the journal, he discovered one last sealed envelope. Across the front were words that felt almost impossible to believe. "Do not open until you are ready to discover who made the call." His hands froze. The answer he had been chasing since the very beginning was finally within reach. One simple decision separated him from the greatest revelation of his life. He gently held the unopened envelope, realizing that once it was opened, there would be no turning back. Every mystery had led to this exact moment. Every clue, every message, every impossible coincidence had been preparing him for one final truth. He slowly broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet inside. Instead of a name, there was a photograph. It showed him, years younger, standing beside someone whose face had been carefully folded out of the picture long ago. On the back of the photograph were the final words of the message. The next chapter begins when the missing face is finally revealed. He looked back at the torn edge of the photograph, understanding that the greatest secret had still not been uncovered. The phone call had opened the door. The journal had explained the journey. But the missing face held the answer to everything that had happened, and the truth waiting behind it would change the meaning of the entire story forever. The photograph refused to leave his thoughts. He placed it on the table and studied every tiny detail once again. The torn edge where the missing face should have been was too clean to be accidental. Someone had removed that person with incredible care, almost as if they wanted the identity hidden until the exact right moment. He looked closer at the background instead. There was an old clock mounted on the wall behind them. At first, it seemed unimportant. Then he noticed the hands of the clock were frozen at a very specific time. The same time the unexpected phone call had arrived days earlier. His heartbeat quickened. That could not be another coincidence. Every clue seemed to whisper the same message. The answer had been present from the very beginning, hidden inside details too ordinary for anyone to notice. As he turned the photograph toward the light, faint writing slowly appeared beneath the faded image. It had been invisible until now. The words were short but impossible to ignore. Find the place where time chose to wait. For hours, he searched through every memory connected to clocks, old buildings, and forgotten places. Then, without warning, a single image returned to him. Years ago, during a family visit, he had entered an abandoned train station where a giant clock had stopped working forever. People often walked past it without looking twice. Yet he suddenly remembered someone telling him that the station had once been known as the place where time stood still. His pulse raced. Every clue connected at once. He wasted no time and began the journey there. The station had changed very little. Dust covered the empty benches, and silence filled every corner. But the enormous clock still hung exactly where he remembered, its hands forever frozen. Beneath it stood a small wooden cabinet he had never noticed before. On its surface was the same mysterious symbol that had followed him since the phone call. Without hesitation, he reached for the handle. The cabinet opened effortlessly, revealing only one object inside, a perfectly sealed audio recorder. He pressed the play button. For several seconds, nothing happened except a soft crackling sound. Then a familiar voice filled the silent station. It was the mysterious caller. But this time, the voice sounded warmer, almost personal. If you are hearing this, then you finally trusted your own heart instead of your doubts. That was always the final test. He stood completely still, listening to every word. The missing face in the photograph was never removed to keep you from the truth. It was removed so you would first understand yourself. Had you seen that face at the beginning, you would have searched for a person instead of searching for meaning. His eyes slowly filled with astonishment. Every step had been carefully designed, not to confuse him, but to prepare him. Then the recording paused for a brief moment before continuing with one final revelation. The photograph is incomplete because the missing face is not hidden somewhere else. It has been waiting much closer than you realize. The recorder clicked off, leaving the station wrapped in silence once again. He looked down at the photograph still resting in his hand. As sunlight streamed through the broken windows, it struck the image at just the right angle. Slowly, another hidden layer began to appear beneath the faded paper. A reflection, almost like a second photograph buried inside the first. His breathing stopped. The missing face was beginning to emerge, not through ink or paint, but through the light itself. He could make out the outline of a smile, the shape of familiar eyes, but not enough to recognize the person completely. Then his phone vibrated one final time that day. A new message appeared, unlike any before. Tomorrow, you will finally meet the one who has been closer than every mystery, every clue, and every unanswered question. He looked from the glowing screen back to the slowly revealing photograph, realizing that the greatest revelation of all was no longer hidden in the past. It was waiting for him in the next moment, ready to transform everything he believed about that unexpected call.